G'day, Tragic here, and bom bom bom. Call of Cthulhu, Sleeper Below. Look at that, it's a brand new box. Let's try it out, shall we? Now, about this game, Cthulhu is without a doubt my favorite card game. I mean, it is just fantastic on so many levels. But unfortunately, I don't get to play it as much as I used to, just because there's been a lot of extremely good games coming out, like Doomtown. A&R took most of my players from me, and I had one really good player who I used to play with on the internet just disappear off the face of the earth. I think he quit the game and went to A&R as well. So that's why it took me so long to get this set. So with any luck, we'll, I don't know. It's just the problem with this game. There are some problems with this game, but mainly because it's brutally unforgiving is probably a word for it. Out of most of the card games in existence, this is has one of the deepest deck building, in my opinion. Like absolutely shockingly deep deck building. It's so amazing. But because of that, because of the very thing that makes it awesome, the deck building is also the very thing that drives players away. And what I mean by that is that when you go up against other people who know the game well and have made good decks, they crush you. I mean, they don't just win a little bit. I mean, they absolutely crush you because so much of this game is in the deck design. Like, it's a very mathy game, but it's also satisfying because of... Anyway, this game used to be a CCG, and it got made into an LCG in like 2004 or something. It was like the third LCG. So it was Warhammer, Game of Thrones, and then this. And this game doesn't have the cycle system, but they're doing what I call a soft cycle. I'm calling it a soft cycle. Basically, they switched from the normal LCG pack system to releasing these big boxes. And they started with Mr. Metonic. And these cards are immeasurably stronger, in my opinion, than some of the older cards. It's like there's like a planned power creep, which, while it doesn't negate the entire pool, it does mean that new players can just buy these big packs and they don't have to worry about tracking down all the out-of-date packs. So it's sort of like creating a break in the game, like a soft cycle, basically. And this is, I think this is the fourth one or fifth one, and this is Cthulhu, the Green Mother. So let's check it out. Okay. Now, this will be a long video. There'll be annotations at the bottom. So let's get started. Whoa. Initiate of Dagon. Okay, so we have a 0-cost, 1-skill cultist. Now, for those really uninitiated, I guess, this game, it's got an extremely complicated resourcing system. It probably needs its own video on how to play this game. But there is a sacrifice cultist mechanic, which is pretty integral to this faction, this monster faction. This is one of the best mono factions in the game. And, I mean, it feeds that concept. And it's a 0 cost, which is great. 1 skill. I mean, this is a fantastic card. It doesn't have any icons, so it's weak, but it's about getting stuff out on the board instantly. Remember, when you win struggles, you only win icon struggles. I mean, you only win stories by gaining investigation icons, and you win them in 2 ways. Skill, which is what this one is here, and you win them using investigation icons, which are like little magnifying glasses. Everything else is just ways to manipulate what characters are at the story. So even though this appears weak, it has the cultist synergy with the rest of the set. We're going to see lots of cultists because this is, the Cthulhu set. And it's got a skill. It doesn't cost anything to put out. So it's just all good. This is an extremely good card, and there's a tendency in this game, especially for new players, to get really hung up on the big monsters, like the huge big monsters, because they're just so cool, you know? They're really, really cool. But the truth is that some of the best cards in the game actually come from the smaller cards, because this is like I said, this is a game about deck building efficiency. It's a really deep deck builder. So it's all about the card synergies and how the cards interact with each other. And it's often the smaller cards that have the highest ways of interaction. But getting this on turn 0, putting out this plus another card, maybe getting 2 or 3 cards out, bang, turn 0. I mean, that's strong. Okay, now we have a Watcher of Signs. She is another cultist. She's also got 1 skill, but she costs 1. And the reason she costs 1, obviously, is because she's got like an ability here. So let's have a look at it. While you control no non-Cthulhu cards, Watcher of Sign gains an investigation icon. Again, extremely strong. Now, it does have a response. After a disaster card is played, choose a resource and move it to another domain controlled by the same player. So this is a ridiculously strong card. Now, it's interesting. Okay, it basically has 2 functions. The first function it has is like a much stronger version of this card, okay? It's got a 1 cost, it's got 1 skill, but if you play this on turn 1 and you're not playing any other cards, it also gains an investigation icon, which means that it can actually place 2 investigation icons upon the story, you know, because it gets 1 for skill, 1 for its, little magnifying glass. But what is, in a way, more interesting about this, I mean, because, you know, we see across all the factions lots of quick not so much 0 cost, but lots of quick 1/1s and, you know, that can just get out on the board and start winning the skills. What's interesting about this is that it's a response to playing disaster cards. Now, there isn't a huge amount of good disaster cards in the game. We'll probably see some disaster cards in this set. But, like I said, one of the great things about this game is the resourcing system, and it can be quite brutal. You know, like if you muck up your resources, you can be in a lot of trouble. So I'm not surprised to see some kind of way of manipulating your resources so you don't have to be as strict with your resourcing. But again, it also says non-Cthulhu cards for the investigation icon thing. And like I was saying before, this is one of the strongest factions for mono decks. And if you've got a mono deck, then you don't really have resource problems, do you? So I don't know. It's sort of like a two versions of the card. You either play it for the investigation icon or you play it for the response. Either way, it's a 1-drop with 1 skill, so it's pretty good. Okay, so what have we got next? Gustav Johansson. Okay, another cultist. So this guy, he's got a skull icon. That means he can do damage. Force response. After a cultist leaves play, draw 1 card, limit 3 times per turn. Okay, this guy is unique, but I mean, this is awesome. I've already said that there is a sacking mechanic, you know, inside the Cthulhu faction. I mean, so you sack a card to gain the ability from the card or gain, you know, like a cost reduction on a big monster. But you also get to draw a card. You can do this 3 times. It's awesome. It's a force response too. So it happens, like the timing sequence, so it happens before responses and stuff. Extremely good card. This is basically a no-brainer. Like, wow. 1 for 1 with a skull. And you get card draw off him. That's an amazingly good card. I like it a lot. Okay, next we have the Mariner. Okay, this is a 2-drop with a skull and 1 skill. It's a low skill on this. I mean, if you might have remembered the skill ratings on the Syndicate pack were just crazily high. Okay, again, it's another cultist. Response. After opponent has committed at least 1 character to a story, exhaust Mariner to commit it and all uncommitted characters to a single story. At the end of the phase, sacrifice the Mariner the Mariner if possible. Okay, let me just read that again. This is a defensive card, so it's after the opponent has committed at least one character to a story. Now, what happens is you have 3 stories out that you commit to, but the commit phase is a single moment in game time, so to speak. So you don't commit to one story and then the next story, then the next story. You select all your cards and they all commit it at once. Okay, so there's no staggering. So the best time to use this is during a defense, I would say. So the opponent commits first, you see what cards he's leaving behind, and then you can tap this sucker to force everyone to go to another story. Now what's interesting is that this will also move your own characters, okay? It says all uncommitted characters, right? Now, of course, you can use this in another way. Like if you commit first, so it's like you're the active player, they commit, this guy's left over in the background, he can then tap and force a commit of all the other guys. So that's pretty strong. I mean, basically, character control is one of the most powerful effects in the game. Now, this seems to me like a card that would be hard to use effectively. But once you had it being used, like once you had a concept in your deck to take advantage of this would be very strong. Especially when you're playing other humanoid factions who, a lot of humanoid factions have a lot of great tap effects, right? And they often leave them back. See, when you commit to a story, you tap to commit. So if you don't have icon struggles, if you don't have arcane struggles, then you really need to have your guys leave people back. And so this could greatly affect your next turn. Because if you're in defense, they commit, you tap, you force all their other characters to tap. If they don't win any arcane, all the stories are going to be completely undefended for your next turn. I mean, that is pretty damn strong for a 2. Awesome. I really like that card. I think that card's a little bit complicated to use, but I think if it's used effectively, it could be extremely strong. Okay, so now we have a 2-drop with 2 skulls, 2 skill. It's got invulnerability and it's a monster. Awesome. Invulnerability means that it can't be damaged. It can still be destroyed, but it doesn't take wounds. Disrupt. When an opponent's card would go to the discard pile, instead put that card on the bottom of its owner's deck. Then Black Wing 1 gets 1 skull icon until the end of the phase. Limit once per phase. Now, this is an interesting one. We are seeing a lot of cards coming out that disrupt things going into the graveyard because Yithian Train was just such a ridiculous deck. They had to build answers for it. Now, this is a very, very soft answer for Yithians. I mean, if you're thinking, oh, this is going to beat Yithians, it's got nothing really to do with it. Because Yithians is really powered by events, not by the monsters. But still, invulnerability for a 2-drop with 2 skulls and 2 skill. I mean, that is... Wow. I mean, that is... if they're, out of all the cards revealed so far, this is probably one of the cards that, I would be very happy to see this in my opening hand. I mean, the 2 skill and the skulls just means that you can use this to completely defend. Now, there's a huge big argument amongst the COC community about whether you want to go first or second. I think you kind of want to go first if you can. But if you have to be forced to go second, then this card is a fantastic card to get in your opening hand because it can defend the entire story basically by itself for those initial turns. Streaming. What have we got here? Obsessive Zealot. Okay, now we've got our first Terror icon and our first Arcane icon. Now, the Terror icon sends people insane, but Terror is a lot weaker than people believe. Like, pretty much everyone, when they get Call of Cthulhu, the card game, the first thing they try and do is make an Insanity Hastur deck because everybody loves the idea of the Insanity. But it's actually quite difficult to play Insanity because anytime you see a Terror icon, that character is actually immune to going insane. There's no way to make that character insane except for a few fancy methods and, using cards to remove that Terror icon. So a lot of Terror icons are defensive to kind of stall that story struggle. And a lot of the insanity effects are now aiming at yourself. Like you send your own people insane to trigger other effects. So it's interesting to see. I've always wanted the insanity to be a little bit larger. And the arcane icon obviously allows people to untap. One of the great things about arcane that people often forget, especially new players, is that if you win the arcane struggle with this guy, you don't have to untap him. You can untap any of the monsters or any of the characters at the story that you win the arcane struggle at. Now let's check his response. It's got some nice icons for 2-drop. After Obsessive Zealot leaves play, choose one character. That character goes insane. Okay, so this obviously, can combo pretty nicely. He leaves play, you get to draw a card, and you get to send someone insane if they don't have a terror icon. I mean, that's extremely strong, especially in early game when you can see that these kind of icons are quite hard to come by when you've got these low drop counts. Yeah, it's interesting. See, this card here, where was it? This draw a card. This guy here, Gustav Johansson. I mean, he's basically a combo piece. And this is an example of a card that can combo with him quite nicely. There's a nice little bit of synergy. And I like that these are all quite cheap drops. This is impressing me so far. Okay. Wait up, I better reveal the card so you can actually see it. Yonk. Okay, wow, look at this. 3 arcane icons. It's a unique Ian Hardway. It's got fast, and he's an independent. Independent is a keyword. Things can trigger off it. Now, fast means that if there is a tie with the icons, like say you have 2 arcanes, they have 2 arcanes or whatever. Anytime there's a tie, it cancels each other out. No one wins. But if you have fast, you always win ties. Okay? Now, if you both have fast, then no one wins again. But what is interesting about this guy is that he's got 3 icons, but he also has these 2 little sort of, brownie kind of icons on the card. What that means is that it adds a struggle to the story. So when this guy commits, there's actually 2 combat struggles and there's 2 insanity struggles. Okay? Now, so what that means is like when you win, like say you're playing this card, which is the next card, and you're playing, you win a skull, okay? No matter how many skulls you win by, you only get 1 wound applied to a character of their choice. They get to choose who gets the wound. But if you have more skull struggles, that means 2 wounds will be, applied. Same with the terror icon. So it just adds another struggle. So instead of being, skull, terror, skull, arcane, investigation, it's terror, skull, arcane, investigation. And that can be very strong. And what is interesting about this card is that it has 3 icons, so it can affect Master of Myths, which is a very popular restricted card, which sort of pops out of your hand at the most inopportune moments. But what I think Ian Hardy is really for is for teaming him up with a much larger monster of some sort, some kind of heavy hitter, a horribly terrifying combat-orientated beast. And you win the arcane, and you use that arcane win to untap the beast, regardless of if it has arcane struggles. So you're using him as basically a way to keep your larger monster in play in the off turn, so he can attack stories and defend stories. And I think that's where his real power is. And remember, he has got fast, so he is an enabler, right? He does stuff by himself, but he needs to combo with another. These icons here, remember, he doesn't have any of those icons, so he's looking to be teamed up with other guys that do. But yeah, get him with a nice big fat monster, and I'm absolutely certain we're going to see a bunch of fat monsters in this deck. Yeah, love that card. Really, really enjoying that card. I think that Arcane Arcane is, I don't know, it's not like it's looked down on or anything. It's just that people seem to forget how powerful it is. I mean, it's basically, Arcane is huge. It's a huge effect. Okay, what have we got here? We're up to the 3 drops now. Wow, I can't pronounce fantasy names. Uknut, Honut, whatever. 3 drop, terror and a skull for 3 skill. 3 skills, really nice actually. Now here's a monster. Awesome. He's villainous. Now villainous is a targetable trait. There's things that can target villainous, but it also means you can't have you know what I'm trying to say. And what I'm trying to say is, if I actually can translate myself, is that you can't have a villainous and an heroic character on the same board. Okay, they don't go together. I think there's actually a neutral that can actually team up with villainous or heroic. But basically, if you have this guy out, you can't play heroic. So this is a restricting card. This restricts you because most of the human factions have heroic people. Like it'd be hard to combine this card with, say, an agency deck, because there's quite a lot of heroic characters in agency, or even with Mr. Metonic. And it's usually good form. I mean, it's not a hard rule, but you know, mixing a monster faction and a human faction sometimes can prove good results. So what else has he got here? While you control no non-Cthulhu cards, this is another mono deck card. Anuk gains 1 terror icon, and other monster characters you control gain double skull icons. Wow. Okay, now this is interesting. What is the most interesting thing about this is that it says non-Cthulhu cards, not non-Cthulhu characters, cards. So we're talking support cards as well, okay? Any card the only cards that you can splash with this guy are event cards that go directly into your graveyard. He does have fast, and he has got a great stats, 3 stats, you know, so he's got a 3 cost, which means he's turn 2 at the minimum, and he's got 3 skill, which is nice, plus he's putting all those skull icons. I don't know, I kind of wish that he didn't have that mono deck enabler thing going on. I actually love monster decks. I mean, they're not tournament quality or anything, but I have a couple of monster decks, and there is I think it's actually in core set. Oh man, I'm so rusty. But there is a Shub Niggurath card which allows you to search the top 5 cards of your hand and just place all the monsters onto the table. It's unbelievably powerful. Shub Niggurath also has Shocking Transformation, where you can like zap a cultist and just boom, mutate the cultist into a card from your hand. So Shubby seems to me like a pretty good fit for this guy, and I will definitely be trying to revive my monster deck, because I love monster decks. I just think they're really impressive, because they've got monsters in them. Monsters! Anyway, so yeah, he's a bit of a... One of the things I dislike about this guy is that he's forcing deck design. Now, this happens a lot in card games, and the mark of a good card, in my opinion, means that it's versatile. It can go into a variety of different things. So it becomes up to the player how they're going to use the card. But this card here is dictating mono decks, or at least mono characters and supports. Still, Shubby seems like a good fit. Shocking Transformation and that monster search card, strong stuff. Okay, now we have another unique Asulaki, whatever. 3 drop. It's got the same stats as the monster there. It's another cultist, another fast. Wow. Got a lot of fast going on in this deck. Villainous fast again. And another mono enabler. While you control no non-Cthulhu cards. he gains a Terra icon, and other cultists you control gain an Arcane icon. Now, like I said, I'm a little bit rusty because I haven't been playing this game a huge amount because of all the other card games I've been playing, but Arcane is making a big comeback. Really, really huge, especially since the new, big box expansions. Getting extra Arcane on your cultist. Remember, he is a cultist, so he hits himself. Oh no, it says other cultists specific. So getting Arcane on all your cultists is good, but the thing is, you don't really want your cultists. Your cultists are enablers. You want to sack them. You want to sacrifice them. They're not really, having Arcane on them is good, but I don't know. He's an interesting card, and like I was saying before, Terra is quite hard to use. You can't be counting on Terra to keep your opponent insane. It doesn't really work that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's the weakest card I've seen so far. It does have fast. It is a 3/3 fast. I mean, that's pretty bonkers. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to play with that one to find out. I think if you're using your cultists as a type of cost reduction, we'll probably see some cost reduction cultists at some point. Then why not give them arcane icons? Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Okay, Bone Sculptor. Wow, look at the art on that one. Awesome. Okay, it's a 3/2 drop and 2 arcanes. 3 arcanes with that guy. That's pretty amazing. And remember what I was saying before, you can untap anything. So that could be what this guy is all about, actually. This guy could be all about allowing your cultists to support. Remember, like thematically, the cultists are worshippers. They're supporters in a way. So giving this guy 3 arcane icons, it's a great way to keep your big beasties untapped. Interesting. Anyway, so here's a 2-drop. Action. Exhaust the Bone Sculptor and pay X, minimum of 1, to choose 1 character in any discard pile with cost of X or lower. Put it into play under your control. At the end of the phase, remove it from the game. Limit once per turn. Okay, so this is another card that allows us to deplete the opponent's discard pile, or even our own. The remove from the game is maybe unnecessary. I probably would, if I designed this card, probably would have said go to the bottom of your deck, of the owner's deck. Still, it's interesting. This could be great for some real surprises, You take out some really good card of theirs, bang, you get a copy of it. But you only have it for 1 phase, actually. So it's only for phase. So let me think about this. It'd be very hard to use this see, this is an interesting effect. You can definitely pull something out of the graveyard. I mean, there's an action window before you, during the commits and all that kind of stuff. Or before the commit, then after the commit. So there's an action window where you can tap this guy before you do any kind of committing to stories. But then you can't actually put him towards the story to activate his arcane icons. So that's quite a large drawback. I'm not a huge... I guess if you really want to get something out of their graveyard or if you want to pull something back, remember, like I was saying, there's a lot of sack effects that we'll probably eventually see in this set. There's definitely sack effects in Cthulhu, in the Cthulhu faction. So if you're going to sack them or if you are expecting them to die or whatever, you don't need to worry about that, remove from game thing. So like, see how it says remove from game? If you pick something up and then it gets killed in a fight and goes into the graveyard, then it loses the target. Okay, at the end of the phase, remove it from the game. That's interesting. It doesn't say if it's still in play, removed from the game. Maybe it does completely remove it, even if it's in the graveyard. So, I'll have to get some information on that. I don't know. I find that this is a kind of card where the 2 different abilities, like the ability on the card text and the actual function of the 3/2 drop with the arcane icons, are kind of in competition with each other because you can't use them both. Now, does that make the card more versatile, or does it mean that it does neither job really well? I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that one either. What have we got here? Dwellers Below. Nice. This is our first deep one, and it's a servitor. Okay, it's another 3/2 drop with a terror and a skull. Action. Choose a non-ancient one character. Put that character and Dwellers Below on the bottom of its owner's deck. More discard pile manipulation. Getting things off the table so they don't go in the discard pile, or just removing threats. Now, non-ancient one character, I mean, this can hit some heavy hitters. Remember, invulnerability, willpower especially, is annoying for Cthulhu decks, because willpower is like having one of these terror icons, and there's lots of ways to give everybody willpower. So, especially in Syndicate. So you could get rid of a combo piece. This would be a great card to actually remove a combo piece, especially in Knight decks. Knight decks are like, in Magic the Gathering, there was a card called the Knights, and they all buffed each other, and they were all little cards, and as more and more hit the table, the board got more and more powerful. And that's what I use to describe cards that buff other cards on the table. And they usually are a couple of key combo pieces. Syndicate definitely has them in the last box. I can remember because I was just looking through that box before I did this video. And, this is a great way to remove that. And it's a 3-drop, so, yeah, I don't know. It's a 3-drop. There's actual spells that can just blow those guys out of the water quite easily. But then they go into the discard pile. Yeah, this is a good card. I like this card for what it is, but I think there are better options for character removal. Interesting. What I like the most about that card is that it's not a destroy and it's not a wound. It can actually it can pretty much hit anything except an ancient one, which is pretty strong. Okay, Functional Psychopath. Okay, he's a 3/3 with a skull. He's an independent. Force response. After characters uncommit from a story, choose and destroy the character with the lowest cost. Okay, interesting. This is a very interesting card. I think there could be quite a lot to be said about this card. The first thing is that it affects you. Okay, this also affects yourself. Okay, now remember, even though you tap to go to stories, Cthulhu, unless the card cost of the ability says exhaust, they still activate even if you're tapped. Now, after characters uncommit from the story, choose and destroy a character with the lowest skill. That hits you as much as your opponent. But having this guy around on the table is going to force him to commit more than one card to each story. Okay, so it's going to reduce his ability to attack multiple stories at once, because he doesn't want to, no one wants to lose their cards. But again, you have the exact same problem. Now, this hits himself as well. So if he's the lowest, he'll kill himself. That could be a good way to, use his ability. So you put him on the table for a 3/3 skull. You assign him to the story with another monster, and then they know that they have to either let you win that story, or they have to sacrifice their least cost guy. Now, there are some high cost decks, but there's also, have we seen this, some really low cost cards, character cards now. Again, this is an interesting card. I think that hitting yourself is a little bit hard to manage. Interesting. That's a big I for interesting. Okay, next. Yep. Next. What's going on here? All my cards are muffed up. I muffed everything up somehow. Okay. Shot. There. Okay, I'm back. See, basically, I've got these decks, the other two decks, and I'm sort of putting them all together. Right, so this is the card I'm up to. Excellent. Henry Anthony Wilcox. Okay, so now we're getting into some expensive cards. A 4-drop, 2 skulls, and an arcane for 4 skill. Oh, and he's a dreamer. Oh, man, I tell you what, they've just re-released. This is what actually made me buy this set, even though I don't really play this game much, is that they've just re-released the Dreamer Cycle as a print on demand. Oh, my God. I'll have to do a video on them. Response. After you play a cultist character, Henry Anthony Wilcox gains invulnerability And cultist characters you control gain a terror icon until the end of the turn. Meh. I don't know. It's alright, I guess. This doesn't really impress me a lot. Obviously, you're going to be playing with multiple... you'll be playing with a cultist deck. So cultists are going to be coming out pretty regularly. I mean, he does have 2 skull icons. So, he's probably going to be winning, not taking damage anyway. And as I said, terror icons are more about defense from insanity than actually sending your opponents insane. I mean, obviously there's many cases where you can send people insane, and it does make it difficult for especially Mismatonic decks. But still, yeah, fork drop, I don't know. This guy's not doing much for me, I'm afraid. I thought we'd see more monsters in this set. Okay, another Servitor. Ruinous Starspawn. Whoa, 5-drop, 2 terror, 2 skulls. When you play Ruinous Starspawn, you may sacrifice X cultist characters to lower the star spawn by X. Okay, so here's the first of the cultist cost reductions. And remember, our good old combo enabler from right back in the beginning, which is just a redonkulous card. This guy here, after a cultist least play, draw a card, limit 3 times. So let's just see how that combo works. We drop this guy as a 3 cost, draw 3 cards. That's pretty crazy. Response: after you play Ruinous Starspawn, choose a story, remove all success tokens from the chosen story. What? Wow, that is awesome. This is something that actually Cthulhu as a faction needs, because basically there's been a kind of massive increase in rush decks. Like I was saying at the beginning, this is a game about card synergies and about deck building, and it's a lot of the cheaper cards like those ones right back at the beginning that have most of the synergies that you can build actual functional decks around. But the problem is that we have all these awesome cards, the cards that people who aren't playing competitively, and also the competitive players, they want to use them. Like, when people first come to the game, it's like, right, give me a gigantic monster that I can put on the table. Whoa, Cthulhu's out. Whoa, great ancient ones come to kill us. But the truth is, these cards are so expensive, and that they often are not actually the way to make really efficient quality decks. And one of the reasons is that the small rush type decks can really just get the stories before you can get your forces on the table. And a lot of the ways to store rush decks have always been about controlling how many icons go into the story and stuff like this. But what this does is that, let them rush the story and then just wipe all the freaking icons. Then they have all their little weenie guys out, and you've got big massive suckers. Remember, if you're using some of those cultists with the multiple arcane icons, you can keep this guy untapped constantly, and he's a servitor, and he's not unique. So you can run this 3 times and just completely stall the game out. And you can get him, a nice combo with these cards would be a 2 cost by sacrificing 3 cultists. Of course, it's expensive to get those cultists out, but not if they're 0 cost. I love that card. I really like that card. I'm not a big fan of 5-drops, but that's what's great about that 5-drop is that it negates the problem of 5-drops, which is deck speed, because you can halt the progress on the stories. There's actually a story which is quite popular. I quite like it. It's lost a bit of popularity, where you need like 10 tokens or something. You need 10 resources to capture it instead of just the normal 5. I mean, if you've got that out, and it also forces people to go to it as well. I'll splice in an image of it. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but wow, dropping these things and just wiping, like 9 tokens. I mean, you could slow down the story advancement to a crawl. It's pretty awesome. Okay, woo! Wow, look at this. It's 3 steadfast. So there's little icons at the top. They're like these 3 little Cthulhu icons. Steadfast means that somewhere in your domain, out of all your domains, you need three. You need three Cthulhu cards resourced. They don't have to be in the same domain, just in all of them. It just stops the card being splashed, and it also stops it from coming into play too early, especially if you're not playing mono. Interesting card. Well, that usually means it's going to be something good. It is a unique. Let's check it out. Fiona Day. Sorry about the... I might stop after this card and come back when the mo is gone. A Driven Visionary. Oh, God, I love the theming of this game. It's a 5-drop. 2 skulls and 2, whatever they're called, arcanes. 3 skill, man. Dormant. Ah, that's a new keyword. What the hell does dormant mean? Dormant. During your operations phase, as a standard player action, you may pay X to attach a card with the dormant keyword face down to a story as a dormant card. X is the number of success tokens you have at that story. Limit 1 per story per turn. When that story is 1, you may play that card, reducing its cost to 0. Dormant cards are considered in play, but do not count as attachment support. Interesting. Dormant, hey? So basically, I can play this face down. Okay, so it's interesting. This is an interesting effect, Dormant. So I can play. This is a 5-drop, right? So if I play this on a story that has no success icons, it will cost, I think I might just stop until that stupid lawnmower goes away. Okay, well, that was fun. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, with the magic of editing, we're back and no time has been lost. Now, if you're wondering why there was no lawnmower noise, but I actually stopped recording, it's because I've got this filter now called noise removal, and I just sampled some of the lawnmower noise and just did a really good job of removing it. But anyway, right, where was I? Fiona Day. Now, she has Dormant. Now, what's interesting about Dormant, I'm not quite sure where I was up to in here, is that it gets attached to your story of choice. But that story, you have to pay the cost of how many, tokens are on the story. So a story can, by default, have 5 tokens on it. There's a couple, I think there's one conspiracy that can have 10. Now, it can attach, that's what it does say. The dormant keyword does say attached to a story, but I'm pretty sure you can attach to a conspiracy. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure you can. And there's a conspiracy with 10 tokens. But anyway, the point is, so if you attach this to a story that had 0 success tokens, it would cost 0 to play it. Now, it's not an attachment per se, so it can't be hit by attachments, but attachment destruction, but it is still in play for other ways of removing it. But what happens is, when the story is won, no matter which player wins it, right, you reduce the cost by the amount of success tokens on the story. So it usually takes 5 success stories to win a story, right? So it takes 5 successes to win a story, which means that you can theoretically play this girl for 0. So just to recap all that long-winded rubbish, you play this onto the story, and then the other player has to worry about what's going to happen when it gets won, because when it gets won, you can then play this card for reduced cost, usually a reduced cost of 5. Now, the problem is the card is played face down with Dormant, so it's not a really great bluffing card. I mean, one of the great things about Dormant, from what I'm understanding from what I just read, is that it basically means, well, you can win this story, but it's going to cost you. So if they're really powering through and they look like they're going to win a story, you could place a dormant card on it. Bam! It might cost you 3 to place it there or something. But then they have to think, well, if I win that story now, is like Cthulhu going to pop out? I mean, I'm sure there's more powerful dormants than this girl. So that by itself is a really, really strong way. And once again, that's something that the Cthulhu needs, and the monster factions need in general, as ways to control the speed of the game. Slow it down so we can get out some of these fun, larger monsters. I mean, look at this baby. I can't, that star spawn is still just blowing my mind. Anyway, so that's Dormant. Very, very strong. Very interesting effect. I like it a lot. Let's check out, she's a cultist, of course, and a dreamer. Disrupt. After you play Fiona Day, sacrifice X other cultists characters to place X success tokens on one story. Okay, well, she's actually hugely strong, isn't she? So she comes in dormant. Then you can play her for free, sack a bunch of cultists, and it does say other cultists, so she can't sack herself, to place tokens. So this could basically be a turnaround. Like, you could win 2 stories pretty much with this. You could win the story with her on it, flip it over, sack some cultists, win a second story, or even more. I know you can only put it onto one story. Well, she's very, very powerful. I think that's an extremely good card. There's actually another card that's similar to this called Tesla, which I absolutely adore, which is all about placing tokens directly on stories. And just considering how powerful he is, I'm thinking that she's going to be even more powerful because you can basically play her for free. Although, you know, it does take time. Okay, more biggins. This is another monster. This is a polar. Dormant again, and this is fast. Okay, so this is a dormant of 6, which means that this costs 1 if you play it on a 0 story. So this is, what's interesting about dormant is that it's going to make your initial resourcing at the start of the game a little harder. Because in the old days, if you got a big level 6er in your opening hand, that was a no-brainer, like a great target for resourcing. You stick it in your resources, and bam, you've got a nice Cthulhu resource without too much worry. But now you have to agonize over the choice. Do I want to play this for free onto a story and have basically a one-cost gigantic monster popping out in the middle of the game? That's very, very cool. Now we'll have to see how it can be removed. There's got to be ways to remove these cards. Anyway, so it's a 6 cost. It's 2 steadfast. So you need a pretty heavy Cthulhu deck to run it. So you need to have, in your opening hand, you need to have 2 resourced Cthulhu cards. It's got 2 terrors and 3 skulls. Pretty crazy. It's fast. And it's got disrupt. When hunting Wendigo would be destroyed, instead discard all wound tokens and attachments from it and attach it as a dormant card to a story. Wow. Now what's interesting here is it doesn't mention that you have to pay the costs of making it dormant again. It just says attach it as a dormant card. That's actually interesting. I'm not quite sure because the rules for dormant say during your operation phase as a standard player action. So it's an action. You may pay. So it's not a play card or it's not a put into play action. It's a standard player action. You may pay X to attach with the dormant keyword. And this is saying when he dies, he gets attached. I think you don't have to pay that fee again. So you could attach him to another story that has a high cost. I'm not sure about that. Because that really changes how good this guy is. He's ridiculously good if you can't get rid of him, because basically every time he dies you just attach him to the story with the most likely to pop straight away and then get him back out for another 1-drop. Now if you can't pay the dormant fees when dormant arrives, then I would assume the card gets discarded. So you'd have to keep, you know, a one domain open. But still, I think he is an extremely powerful monster. The Cthulhu monster deck is looking good. I love monster decks. I'm going to make, from what I've seen so far, what I want to make is a Cthulhu Shub-Niggurath deck. I want to make a monster deck all about monsters. I probably won't be competitive, but it'll be fun. And have Cthulhu support and have Shub-Niggurath and neutral events. Things like Shocking Transformation and, you know, that other one that lets you put the top 5 cards onto the table if they're all monsters. Okay, and now we have Followers of Relia. Flip this baby over. Yoink, yoink. I've got a couple of questions about Dormant. I'm definitely sure Dormant cards get discarded if you can't pay the Dormant cost when it's revealed. but I'm just curious. You might have to pay the dormant, like say he dies and he goes to a 3 success token location. You may have to pay 3 to reattach him. I'm not sure. I don't think so though. Anyway, follows a Relier. This is, wow, Society Occultist. Okay. And this is another Steadfast, and it's unique, and it's a 6 cost. Wow, that is expensive. 3 skulls, an Arcane, excellent. Arcane's really important for Cthulhu decks if you can get Arcane running, because like I've been saying a few times, you want to win the Arcanes and untap these guys. These motherfuckers, man. You want them always untapped. Okay, reduce the cost to play Followers of Relier by 2 for each story card in an opponent's 1 pile. Meh. I don't really like that. I mean, I do like the idea of catch-up, and again, the whole problem with Cthulhu, and often with the monster factions now, is the speed of the game is increased so much. So there's a good chance that they're going to have a couple of early stories. We've seen a lot of cards in this set designed to slow down the opponent, okay, slow down their scoring. There was one that wiped, success tokens, for example. So there's a good chance that you'll probably get this out for 4. Force response. After you play Followers of Relier, each player sacrifices 2 non-cultist characters that he controls. Well, that's pretty strong. I mean, unless you're playing versus, I mean, there are cultists in the other sets, but you're assuming that that's going to hit and wipe out some of their guys. And remember, it's a sack effect, so it can even kill ancient ones. You can kill anything that you want to sack, anything, and he's forced to sack 2. So there's quite a lot of comboing going on there. Like, you need to have the card, you need to have the cost reduction working, you need to have the cultist on the table to stop you killing your own guys, otherwise it'll just kill himself. I know he's a cultist, he won't kill himself, but you know what I'm saying, you'll still have to kill 2 of your guys. Interesting. Okay, now we have Kasogatha. It's an ancient one. It's 7 cost. My God. 2 arcanes, beautiful. Skull and 2 terrors, nice. Villainous, invulnerable. When you play Kasugoth, you may sacrifice X cultist characters to lower the Cthulhu's cost by X. Okay, that's a pretty standard Cthulhu style faction thing. Sacking cultists for a cost reduction. That's nice. Force response. After you play Kasugoth, choose 1 character, 1 support card, and 1 conspiracy. If able, destroy all chosen cards. Wow. So basically, you can really wreck the other person's opponent. Now, it does, the card specifically says conspiracy, and this rule for Dormant specifically says story. Keyword face down to a story. So I have to check that. I'm really not sure whether you can attach it to a conspiracy, because like I said, there is a 10 success story conspiracy, which could make this guy cost nothing to play. Anyway, so that's a pretty strong card. I'm not sure if it's win-win enough, if you know what I'm saying. Like, this card is so expensive. Is it good enough? I mean, destroying a character is amazing because you can kill invulnerable, you can kill ancient ones because it's using the keyword destroy, and also taking out support and a conspiracy, so it can really decimate. It's like a combo breaker, combo breaker, bam. That's not that really esoteric anymore because I think they've actually remade Killer Instinct, haven't they? Anyway, whatever. He's a combo breaker because he can basically ruin all the combo pieces, support, conspiracies, and any character. So it's good. He's got his place, but there might be better gigantic monsters in the set. So, I mean, there's got to be Cthulhu's got to be in here somewhere, right? Oh, there he is there. Cthulhu himself. I think this is the 3rd version of Cthulhu. 10! Oh my God, 10 cost. So you'll really want to find out whether it can, it doesn't have dormant anyway, so who cares? 10 cost, my God. 4 steadfast, wow. 2 terror, 2 skulls, and an arcane. Arcane's important. Villainous, it does have dormant. Villainous, dormant, and invulnerability. Wow. So that's the big question. Can you attach Dormant to a conspiracy card? Because there is a success token conspiracy card which can make him a 0 cost. That's pretty redonkulous. Disrupt. After you play Cthulhu, discard up to 3 total resources from your domains. Oh, God. Each player must sacrifice each character and support card he controls of cost X or lower. X is the number of resources discarded in this way. Okay, so you don't have to do 3. You can only, discard 2 resources or 1 resource. Interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Resourcing is like kind of the whole point of this game. This isn't strong enough to win you the game, is what I'm saying. This isn't like, bam, Cthulhu's out, game over. That's what a lot of people think about these big monsters, but it just doesn't work that way. And bom bom bom. Call of Cthulhu, Sleeper Below. Look at that, it's a brand new box. Let's try it out, shall we? Now, about this game, Cthulhu is without a doubt a card game. I mean, it is just fantastic on so many levels. But I used to, just because there's been a lot of extremely good games coming out, like Doomtown. A&R took most of my players from me. Really, really good player who I used to play with on the internet just disappear off the face of the earth here. So that's why it's taken me so long to get this set. So with any luck, we'll I don't know. It's just a. The problem with this game, there are some problems with this game, but mainly because it's a word for it. Out of most of the card games in existence, this is has one of the deepest deck building. In my opinion, like absolutely shockingly, it's so amazing. But because of that, because of the very thing that makes it awesome, the deck building, is also the very thing that drives players away. And what I mean by when you go up against other people who know the game well and have crush you. I mean, they don't just win a little bit. I mean, they absolutely crush you. And it got made into an LCG in like 2004 or something. It was like the 3rd LCG. So it was Warhammer, Game of Thrones, and then this. This game doesn't have the cycle system, but they're doing what I call a soft cycle. I'm calling it a soft cycle. Basically, LCG pack system to releasing these big boxes. And they started with Mr. Maton. Cards are immeasurably stronger, in my opinion, than some of the older cards. It's like there's like a planned power creep. It does mean that new players can just buy these big packs and they don't have to worry about tracking down all the out-of-date packs. So it's sort of like creating a break in the game, like a soft cycle, basically. And I think this is the 4th one or 5th one. And this is Cthulhu, the Green Mother. So let's check it out. Okay. Now, this will be a long video. There'll be annotations at the bottom. So let's get started. Whoa. Initiate of Dagon. Okay, so we have a 0 cost, 1 skill cultist. Now, for those really uninitiated, I guess, this game, it's got an extremely complicated resourcing system. It probably needs its own video on how to play this game. But there is a sacrifice cultist mechanic, which is pretty integral to this faction, this monster faction. This is one of the best mono factions in the game, actually. And, I mean, it feeds that concept. And it's a 0 cost, which is Gil. I mean, this is a fantastic card. It doesn't have any icons, so it's weak, but it's about getting stuff out on the board instantly. Remember, when you win struggles, you're not just... You only win icon struggles. I mean, you only win stories by gaining investigation icons, and you win them in 2 ways. Skill, which is what this one is here, and like little magnifying glasses. It is weak. It has the cultist synergy with the rest of the set. We're going to see lots of cultists because this is, you know, the Cthulhu set. And response. After a character is destroyed, look at the top 4 cards of your deck and arrange them in any order. Okay, well that's extremely strong, isn't it? What's great about it is that it's the top 4, so you can stack your resources as well as stack your turns. It's a very simple card. Things get destroyed. You can. This would actually be good in a number of other decks. It is unique, which stops it getting crazy out of control. But if you can combo this with some card draw or combo this with some put into play effects, then that's all good. I mean, stacking your deck is really, really great. Actually, let me just have a quick look. Yeah, it says your deck, so you can't use it to scry the other guy's deck, luckily. Okay, Summon the Sleeper, a ritual, forced response. When you exhaust a cultist character, pay 1 success token on... place 1 success token on Summon the Sleeper. Action, sacrifice Summon the Sleeper and discard 5 success tokens from it to search your deck for a servitor or ancient one. Reveal it and add it to your hands. Okay, so Summon the Sleeper. Well, it is. It's a ritual. Is this the first time we've had a ritual outside of what's that new faction with the white one again? Twilight. Silver Twilight? Okay, so that's pretty interesting. So you don't get to play it though. You just get to put it out on... You know, just put it into your hand. So what servitors did we get? Ancient, is it all ancient one? Yeah, ancient one. So we got ancient ones. Well, actually, when you exhaust a cultist, so you could use this to get your dormant Cthulhu out very, very quickly. He's an ancient one. Monsters, cultists. There was a servitor. Here we are. Ruinous Star Spawns. That is a servitor, and this is an extremely strong card. But it, There's a lot more servitors already, but we didn't actually get... there's a servitor. That's a good way to get rid of guys. That's the one that allows you to stick it at the bottom of the deck and get rid of one of their cards. So, yeah, not a lot of targets in this set, actually, for this card. But it's still pretty good. I've never really been able to get rituals to really work. Most of the rituals are sack rituals in the Twilight Lodge. And the problem with that is that there's just too many other things you want to be using those sacks for. Because when you're paying a cost, you have to use that as the cost. So say you have a cultist that says, sack cultist to reduce cost of Cthulhu or something. Sacking that, you can either sack that for the ritual or you can sack that for the cost reduction, but it doesn't do both. Like, if a card says sack of something, then you have to focus that sacking for the card you want to trigger. But this one is a lot easier to trigger than those rituals because it's just whenever cultists tap. So it should be very easy to get this to function. Pretty cool. And Unasperlican Cluton, whatever that means. During the operations phase, reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is a cultist character, you may play that card as if it were in your hand. Oh, this is really cool. Now, remember, play still requires you to pay costs. So it's just a way of speeding up your draw. Now, what's good about this card is that if it's not a cultist, you don't discard it or anything. But the problem is, do you reveal it? Yeah, you have to reveal it. So yeah, that's not a huge... I mean, unless you're stacking your deck or you've got a crazy amount of cultists, that could be a bad thing, revealing all that data to your opponent. Okay, 7 Thomas Street, location. Players must pay 1 as an additional cost to play an event card. Each player may ignore this effect if he controls 2 or more cultists. Well, I love this card. This card is the bomb. Now, the problem with this game, well, not a problem, but one of the things is with this game is that costs, like the resourcing system is quite brutal, but the way you use the resourcing system by draining entire domains, like you could use a 4 or 5 point domain to pay a 1 cost. So there's a good chance that if they might be able to ignore this card, basically, because they might be playing events and they'll still be draining 3 point domains regardless of whether you had this card out or not. But once people get better and better and better at this game, they start to have planned domain sort of setups. They're going to plan, okay, I always need 1 domain to have 1, only ever get 1 card in it, and that domain has to be a certain faction, and then this one will be a 2. So when you see people like pros talk about their decks, they'll say, I've got a Cthulhu deck and it's got a 3-2-1 domain and stuff like that. So this could really stuff up someone who's got a very, very strict domain, for his decks. It would, but then, once they know it's out there, it is unique, so you can't stack the effect. I really like this. This is the kind of card that can really change up the way someone else uses their deck. I mean, it doesn't affect you too much because you're going to have cultists anyway, but it could really make a huge difference because this is a game that, what this game excels at is combat tricks. Like some people say combat tricks make or break a card game, and in my opinion this has some of the best tricks of any card game. It's just so awesome, all the stuff you can do, and that's going to change the costing of almost all that stuff. So it's actually quite strong. I think this is definitely a card I'd want to play with and see how it goes, because the problem with this card is that it's dependent on your opponent having a deck that it'll affect. They might not be running a lot of these things, or if they do, they might not have a strict domain, strangulation thing going on, and they don't really care. It's like, oh yeah, so what? I've got to pay 1 extra. I'm draining a 4 point domain anyway. Who cares? I don't know. It's a good card, but it has that problem of being dependent on the other person's deck. Okay, Irem, it's a lost civilization. This is another dormant 5. Sacrifice Irem to have each player sacrifice all but 2 characters he controls. Nice. Well, can't go much wrong with that. It's a beautiful little stalling card. Now remember, what's great about this for Cthulhu is that Cthulhu, we have big, massive monsters in Cthulhu. So if we are playing against, like a human deck and they've got to sacrifice all their stuff except for 2 puny humans, and then they're left with some giant monsters on the other side. I mean, that's very powerful. And I think it's actually quite clever that dormant cards are played face down, because if this was placed face up, it would be too strong a stalling tactic, because people just wouldn't go to that location if they had a choice. Yeah, I think that's a very, very strong card, particularly for this faction. Now, of course, dormant, I don't really know how effective it's going to be, but it seems pretty strong just from, I only just read about it today. Aurora Borealis. Wow, the art on that card's nice. Action. Ignore the resource match requirement for the next character card you play this phase. And it's a 3 steadfast. Meh. It could be good. But like I said, I just talked about domains. If you're playing correctly, which you probably are after a while, you're not going to have these kind of resource problems because you know what resources you need to resource. You say, domain 1, it has to be a 4 point domain, and I need 2 of this resource, 1 of this resource. I need my 3rd to be a 1 point domain. It's going to have this resource in it. You work out the resourcing you require. So you really shouldn't need this card. Ever. Okay, next. Yonk. Black Seas of Infinity. Whoa, that's a good one as well. 2, another steadfast. Lots of steadfast in this set. Play only during the story phase. Action. Drain all domains. Okay, well, here you go. This is a trick. And we're in the events now, obviously. And this is a trick, just what we're talking about. A fantastic trick. You can just completely stuff people up. The problem with this is that it is preemptive. And that means it doesn't remove the threat. I mean, if you suspect them of having a combat trick, it's not going to get that combat trick out of their hand. But what's really great is that it has 0 cost, which means that you can play this when your domains are already drained. So this is like as good a trick as you can get, because they don't know it's coming. They can't even see that you've got a domain undrained. Oh, he hasn't got his domains all drained. There might be something coming. Bam! Out of nowhere. Oh yeah, my domains are drained. Well, take a 0 cost Storm of Infinity in the face. Yeah, but it's good. But it's a preemptive card. You have to suspect that they're going for something. And this would be used for that story where you just don't want to lose it. You know? And there are types of decks where you can be more assured of running into events and like triggerable powers. Because remember, you often have to use domain payments to trigger the actual abilities of the creatures and the attachments and everything. So yeah, I reckon that's a really cool card. I love that it's 0 cost. That makes it worth playing. If it was a 1 cost, it would be a completely different story. Okay, Cthulhu Fatagan. Disaster. After the character commits to a story, its controller must either discard one of his success tokens from that story or discard a card from his hand. Okay, this is a pretty decent card. Yeah, I like this card. This is yet another card that is controlling the tempo of the game. Seems to be a real theme in this deck. Often people are all in when they're when they expect to win a story. It's better to win a story and ensure it being won than it is to possibly lose a story for another whole turn. I mean, you don't want to leave yourself undefended, but people often really go for it when they think they're going to win a story. And this is a great way of going, well, actually, bam, you don't win the story. And now you got a lot of people tapped. I like it. Cthulhu Fatagan. I can't believe there hasn't been a Cthulhu Fatagan card before. It's like one of the most famous Lovecraftian sayings. Foul Induction. It's a spell. Put any number of cultist characters from a combined printed cost of 3 or lower from your discard pile into play. Love it. Absolutely love it. Beautiful card for Cthulhu. The 3 or lower is a little bit of a meh, but still, when you've got 0 cost cultists, so that you put 3 0 cost cultists plus another 3 1 cost cultists, you could put, 6 cultists onto the table for a 3 cost, sack them all, reduce costs with them, or do whatever abilities they have. I reckon that's a great card. You really need to examine the entire spectrum of cultists that are in the game and really find out what are the cheapest and for the most powerful. What do I want to sack my cultists for? And do they have any sacking abilities? Do they have any coming into play abilities? Do they have any leaving play abilities? That's what you want to be looking at. I like that card a lot. And it's an event at action speed. So you can actually do this before you commit. So you could, bam, I actually can defend against a whole bunch of stuff here. Polar Vortex. It's another disaster. Each player skips his next refresh phase. Wow. Interesting. Now, this is a card that seems very powerful, but I don't really think it's great for this faction. There has been quite a few... I've talked quite a bit about how you want to usually team Cthulhu, in my opinion, with a high arcane faction. And arcane is really coming into its own. People are really into arcane now. And without arcane, without your guys being untapped, then this is going to be a problem. I mean, sure, you might tap his whole army. He won't get to refresh. But if your guys are tapped, it's not going to make a difference because he can still play and attack. So this is an interesting card. It's action speed, so you can do it at the end of the turn before the turn refreshes. Yeah, I don't know. I reckon this is a good card. This is the kind of card when you're playing defensive, again, it could be considered a tempo card. It's not as strong a tempo card. But if you're expecting, like when you attack someone, they can defend. They don't have any worries about defending because they know they can untap afterwards. While you have to use Arcane, okay? Because they will become their turn, and then their turn would then get to refresh. So when you're in that position, when you've just attacked them, you can stop them from doing that. Now, that's actually quite strong. Interesting. I don't know. It's good. It's good. It's not fantastic, but not bad. The stars are right. Beautiful. I actually have a really cool game called The Stars Are Right. I should show it to you one day. You guys would like it. It's a Cthulhu game. Loyal. Action. Put a dormant character into play from your hand. At the end of the phase, attach it as a dormant card at a story where you have no success tokens. Otherwise, remove it from the game. Wow. And it's loyal. Now, this is the first loyal card, I think. Now, the thing about loyal is kind of like steadfast, except it has to be all from your one domain. So whatever domain, this is a 4 cost. So you have to use a domain that has 4 Cthulhu cards inside. So this is really, really strong. Now, the problem with this is that it's loyal, which means that you can cast this turn 4 at the least. Okay, you get to put a very strong character into play, but you need to have a completely empty story to attach it to, which is then a minimum of 5 turns before that will actually come into play. So you're looking at minimum a 9th turn to get the second showing of whatever card you chose. And that's pretty late. Interesting card. I'm not a big fan. If it was a bit cheaper, I don't know, if this was like 2 loyal, it would have been more interesting for me. But I think 4 loyal is a little bit harsh, just because I guess you could consider the second appearance of the dormant character as a bonus. Right? For 4 cost, you're getting a dormant character. We've seen 7 costs. We've seen 10 cost dormant characters. Get it into play straight away, cheap and fast, and then it goes away. But the second coming, like the second part of the text, where it attaches to a story with no tokens, well, actually, is it no tokens or you have no tokens? Where you have no success tokens. It actually changes it up quite a lot. So you could then, okay, now I'm starting to understand this card. This card is a lot better than I just gave it credit for. Remember, dormant cards get placed face down. And I was talking about how one of the great things about having them face down is that I think it would be very, very strong to have face-up dormant cards where your opponent knows that that story just has a hardcore monster that he can't deal with. So he's never going to go there. He'll defend against you, but he won't really try and win that story because he doesn't want to see that monster come out until his board's set up. With this card, because he comes out onto the table first, does something, and then he attaches, and you attach him to a story that you're losing, have got no tokens, and he's got like 4 would be perfect, or 3 maybe actually, because you don't want to just win the game straight out. But the point is, you can stick this to it, and he knows what it is, so it gets that extra level. And then also, because you can stick it to any location where, just as long as you personally don't have story tokens there, you can really stall out his story acquisition, and you can actually be relatively sure that there's a possibility that you're going to get him out instead of turn 9. You might be able to get him out on turn 5. I mean, if he goes for the story straight away at the maximum speed. Interesting. So that makes him a lot better, and I can see now why he's costed a bit higher, because it's quite a heavy draw. Okay, wow, a 6 cost event. Crazy Town. Disaster Dormant. Reveal all the top 5 cards of your deck and put all characters revealed into play. Return all other cards to the top of the deck in the same order. What? Reveal the top 5 cards of your deck and put all the characters revealed into play. Return all the other cards on the top of your deck in the same order. Wow, well that's an awesome card. It's a dormant. It's got 4 steadfast. I mean, why wouldn't you play this? Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Now, you can only have 1 dormant attached to any given story. So, I don't know. Interesting card. Interesting mon. Oh, and here's a conspiracy. Raising of the Great Old Ones. 2 terror, 3 skulls. Wow. Wow. So, that's a Master of Myth. Master of Myth. Conspiracy. Characters that are made insane at this conspiracy are destroyed. Characters wounded by losing a skull struggle at this conspiracy are attached to the domain of their owner's choosing instead of being destroyed. Wow, that's not as impressive. So you're basically accelerating their domains by winning skull struggles. Yeah, that really doesn't do a lot for me. I don't like the idea of that at all. But I guess you could be sent. You could send your own guys there to die. I don't know. Interesting. I would have to really see how that played out. And that's it. We're done. Cthulhu is done. Okay. Let's upside down. Almost. We've only got a few to go now. Okay. So bam. It's our first neutral. Kelly McHenry or whatever. Anyway. Independent, it's a 2/1 drop with a arcane, toughness and willpower, nice. After commits to a story, add 1 success token to her. Sacrifice to search your deck for a character with cost X or less and put it in your hand, X is the number of success tokens. Well, I mean, that's awesome. So it's a card, she's doing your arcane struggles for you, and she's just building up, and then she's a fetch. She doesn't put it into play, unfortunately, so she's just a fetch, and do you have to reveal? No, you don't have to reveal the card. Interesting. So that's pretty cool. I like her a lot. I really dig 2 and 1 drops are awesome, and 0 drops now. Okay, even death may die. There you go, it's an actual quote. Attach to the opponent's discard pile. Fated 4. Disrupt. When the card would enter the attached discard pile, instead remove it from the game, then place 1 success token on even death may die. Okay, Fated's a kind of new sort of thing. You place it at the... Once this gets 4 success tokens, you put it on the bottom of your deck. Syndicate has ways to draw from the bottom of the deck, but I don't think anyone else does. Again, this is another card specifically designed to stop discard play from that horrendous Yithian's deck that everybody absolutely despises. They're making all these cards to deal with it when they should just give us all new free cards to replace Yithians. I hate them! Ancestral Fear, Madness, Disrupt. When a card effect would cause any number of characters you control to leave play, instead choose and drive any number of those characters insane to cancel the effect on that character. What? When a card effect... Okay. When a card effect would cause any number of characters you control to leave play, instead choose and drive any number of those characters insane to cancel the effects of that character. Interesting. This is a combo piece. It can go well with those massive disasters that clear the board. Instead of clearing your board, you send everyone insane. Interesting card. I actually quite like this card. It's a 1 cost, so it's not too expensive, and it's out of nowhere. And it really does give those disasters a little more potency because you can... It's like a protection card, but it protects entire board state, not just individual cards. I actually really like this card. I think this is a combo piece that's been missing from the game for quite a while. I wonder if I could get this card to work with Azeroth. There's a card called Azeroth where you put it into play, right, and it destroys everything. It destroys everything in the entire board. It kills all supports, all characters, everything, including your stuff. And then if it's on the table at the end of the turn, you lose the game, right? So, and I've always wanted to make a deck where you put it on the table, you wipe the board, you use Azeroth to win and all this stuff, and then there's ways to sack it or bounce him back into your hand. I was teaming it up with Silver Twilight. I still think that's a fun deck, but it's never worked. I could never get it to function properly. Ancestral Fear could actually get that to work because Astaroth would go down and you could protect all your characters. Interesting. Well, there's 2 decks I'm going to be trying with this set. I've already figured out 2 decks I want to make with this. I want to see if I can revive my Astaroth deck. And also, I'm going to make a Cthulhu monster with Shubby. Inspector John LaGrasse. Okay, now this is what a human looks like. 2. Wow, strong human too. He's got 2 investigation icons. I've got a 3 cost with a 1 drop. I'm dying for the agency pack. I've hardly ever played agency in like the 10 or whatever years I've been playing this game. It's just never been... I've never really enjoyed agency. I've always found that they excel at skull struggles, and I've always found the skull struggles to not be as potent as you might think. But look at this card: 3 cost, 1 drop with 2 investigation icons, heroic and toughness 1. Oh yeah, that's damn good. Okay, after opponent triggers a card effect that targets a card you control, refresh a domain. Interesting. The problem with that is that it doesn't actually stop the targeted effect. I don't really like that ability, but a 3 drop for 2 investigation icons is redonkulous. The Peel Association. It's a government society. 6 cost, 3 skulls, 2 investigation icons. Reduce the cost of play by 2 for each story card in an opponent's 1 pile. I hate these cards. I can get a tragic here. Call of Cthulhu, Sleeper Below. Look at that. It's a brand new box. Let's try it out, shall we? Now, about this game. Cthulhu is without a doubt my favorite card game. I mean, it is just fantastic on so many levels. But unfortunately, I don't get to play it as much as I used to, just because there's been a lot of extremely good games coming out, like Doomtown. A&R took most of my players from me, and I had one really on the internet just disappear off the face of the earth. I think he quit the game and went to A&R as well. So that's why it took me so long to get this set. So with any luck, we'll I don't know. It's just the problem with this game. There are some problems with this game, but mainly because it's brutally unforgiving is probably a word for it. Out of most, this is one of the, in my opinion, like absolutely shockingly deep deck building. It's so amazing. But because of that, that makes it awesome, the deck building is also the very thing that drives players away. And what I mean by that is that when you go up against other and have made good decks, they crush you. I mean, they don't just win a little bit. Design, like, it's a very mathy game, but it's also satisfying because of that. Anyway, this game used to be a CCG, and it got into an LCG in like 2004 or something. It was like the Game of Thrones and then this. And this game doesn't have the cycle system, but they're doing what I call a soft cycle. I'm calling it a soft cycle. Basically, an LCG pack system to releasing with Mr. Metonic. And these cards are immeasurably stronger, in my opinion, than some of the older cards. It's like there's like a planned power creep, which, while it doesn't negate the entire pool, it does mean that new players can just buy these big packs and they don't have to worry about tracking down all the out-of-date packs. So it's sort of like creating a break in, basically. And I think this is the 4th one or 5th one. And this is Cthulhu, the Green Mother. So let's check it out. Okay. Now, this will be a long video. There'll be annotations at the bottom. So let's get started. Whoa. Initiate of Dagon. We have a 0 cost, 1 skill cultist. Now, for those really uninitiated, I guess, this game, it's got an extremely complicated resourcing system. It probably needs its own video on how to play this game. But there is a sacrifice cultist mechanic, which is pretty into faction, this monster faction. This is one of the best mono factions in the game, actually. And, I mean, it feeds that concept. And it's a 0 cost, which is great. This is a fantastic card. It doesn't have any icons, so it's weak, but it's about getting stuff out on the board instantly. Remember, when you win struggles, you're not just win stories by gaining skill, which is what this one is here, and you win them using investigation icons, which are like little... Everything else is just ways to manipulate what characters are at the story, basically. So even though this appears weak, it has the cultist synergy with the rest of the set. We're going to see lots of cultists because this is, the Cthulhu. The Syndicate box blew my mind. The game is so changed now. I mean, like the speed it runs at, the way they've been changing the way the whole game functions. Changing what are considered good values. And this card would have blown my mind a while back. It's still good. And 2 investigation icons for 3. Fast and a 4-drop. What am I talking about? This is a great card. Okay, let's see what his ability is. When you would place a success token at a story at which he's committed, you may instead place that success token at another story. Wow, that guy is redonkulous. That card is redonkulously powerful. Okay, we have another one of these crappy 6 cost cards, which I'm not a big fan of. They've all kind of sucked so far. Let's try this one. 3 investigation icons is pretty tasty though, isn't it? 2 arcane. Again, you can get him cheaper if they're winning and you're not. Response. After you place 1 or more success token on a story at which it is committed, place a lost civilization location into play from your hand or your discard pile. That's actually pretty cool. There's actually some really cool lost civilizations. And I'm fairly certain one of the lost civilizations is a retargeting location that'll sort of deflect spells and stuff to other targets to keep you guys protected. It came out in the nerd box. I don't know. Still, 6 costs for a nerd deck is just ridiculous. I mean, yeah, again, you can get it cheaper if your deck sucks. These 6 cost cards, they're just not doing it for me, I'm afraid. I think the game is just too fast for them. Budding Dark Young. More Dark Ones. Oh, look at this. 3-drop for 2 with a terror and 2 skulls. Nice. Not all Dark Youngs have terror. Toughness 2. Response. After Budding Dark Young leaves play, put into play from your hand a Dark Young character with 3 or lower. Oh, well, this is awesome. I mean, there is a deck, there's a Shubby deck, which is extremely strong, or used to be extremely strong back when I used to be competitive, which was basically Cthulhu's version of Endless Fairies. It's just like, dark one, coming out of the graveyard, coming out of your hand, just blah, 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 just getting overwhelming forces of craziness. There was actually a really fun Insanity deck where you could drive them all insane. Anyway, whatever. My point is, this is a great card for that deck. More Dark Ones, more interesting ways of getting one to the table. Okay, the Shepherds. This is another 6 cost. Now, remember, none of these 6 cost cards have actually been ancient ones. None of them have had that problem. I mean, that means that all these cards can be targets for Shocking Transformation, and other effects are put into play. So if you're playing cards that can put things into play without you having to pay that 6 cost, then these cards suddenly get good, because they've actually got pretty cool effects. It's just that 6 costs, and the icons are nice, but 6 cost is crazy. Okay, so lots of icons of awesomeness. After you place 1 or more success tokens on a story, Choose a character attached to one of your domains as a resource and put it on the top of your deck. Awesome. I love that. I love domain manipulation cards. Now, there is a deck that is extremely strong, which everyone's going to get to play soon because they've now reprinted Dreamlands that allows you to sort of blink things in and out of the domain. There's a couple of Yog-Sothoth cards that can blink out of the domain. And it's a really strong effect because it allows you to resource with less care. And resourcing is one of the big decision points in this game. So it's really cool. Okay, the Theophist. I can't even pronounce that. Theophist or whatever. Guy who studies religion. 2, 0. Zero skill. Okay, exhaust to choose a non-neutral resource and name a faction. Until the end of the phase, that resource is now considered a match of the chosen faction instead of its printed. This is actually a really cool idea for a card because neutral resourcing is, not cool basically because a neutral resource can count as a point, but it can't count to any individual faction. You can't use it to pay for anything. Okay, see this card here, for example, has Steadfast. All these 6 costs. I probably missed it before because I was just skipping over them because I didn't like them so much. But because it's got Steadfast, you can't just run it in any other deck for when you're using those put into play effects. But with something like this, bam, you can. You can change those neutrals around. And being able to have more control over your mana pool is a good thing. I reckon that's an interesting card. I don't know. You'd have to find a deck that he fitted into, though. Like, he's not powerful on his own. Professor George Engel. Okay, that's more like it. A 3/3 with a investigation icon. Beautiful. It's a faculty lodge. Disrupt. Return him to your hand to cancel an effect just triggered. Booyah. Can't get much better than that. Twilight are awesome. That's a great card. Bang. Not much you need to say about that. Cancel effects are awesome. Okay, host. 6 cost. Wow, these are so crazy, aren't they? 2 skulls, 2 arcane, and an investigation. Return a lodge character to your hand, then draw 1 card. Limit 3 times per turn. Interesting. That's a very strong effect for lodge as well. I'm just not sure how these 6 costs are going to function. I mean, maybe with some put into play effects, I'll like them. But this whole, reducing cost based on your opponent's story cards, I mean, that just sucks. I can't tell you how much I dislike that. I'd rather my deck win. I don't want to plan for it not winning. That's the thing. When you're doing deck design, there's an idea in deck design of building a deck to handle multiple situations. If you build a deck that can handle multiple situations, you're able to deal with all the different decks you might meet in competition. That's the idea, and it's an interesting one. But my preferred way of deck design is just make a really fucking good deck that kicks ass and crushes people to dust. You don't need to worry about all the other situations if you are kicking their ass all over the place. Okay. The Tablets of Ning. Ooh. Anyone know what that's a picture of? I would say it would be a Yithian checking out a tablet. Fated 3 artifact. After a character you control is destroyed, exhaust the tablet to put into play a character from your hand whose cost is lower than the destroyed character. Then place a success token. Interesting. For starters, it's put into play, so it's bypassing all costs. I like the way that it kind of reduces cost over time. So if you start with a 5 cost, then you can put in a 4 cost, a 3 cost, a 2 cost, and then he's got all the tablet's gone anyway. I like it. I reckon this is a good card. Again, you really need to find out what kind of deck you want to run with this, because it's going to really be important to keep an eye on your cost curve. And it's unfortunately unique. Anyway, that's a good card. That's one of the better little Twilight cards. Why have we got so many Twilight? I guess Twilight is still trying to play catch up. 0 cost. That's what I like to see. And 3 steadfast. Action. Drive any number of your characters you control insane, whose total icons include to search your deck for an ancient one and put it into play. Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, you can drive any number of characters you want insane, and their icons have to total 2 skulls, 3 arcane, 2 investigation, and then bam, ancient one out. 0 cost. Interesting. That's a very cool card. Doesn't get the ancient one out as quickly as some ways, but I like it. I like this a lot. I think this is actually a pretty damn good card. It'd be interesting to see. You really have to, I mean, you need at least, at least 3 cards minimum to get this to function. Absolute minimum, I reckon, 3 cards. I mean, there's probably, combinations people could work out with less than, but you're looking at kind of at 3 cards minimum. Maybe 4 cards would be the average, I'd say. If your deck was designed for it, you definitely need to have a human faction in to get all those investigation icons. Interesting. I reckon that's a card that I'd definitely like to play with. Getting ancient ones out for free is always a good thing. Okay, some Cindy Love. Wow, look at this. 3 for 3 skill with 2 skulls, an arcane, and an investigation. That is just bonkers. While Sinclair is committed to a story, only characters with skill 3 or higher count their icons during struggles at that story. Wow. Well, obviously she combos with all the skill reductions. I mean, there's just so many ways to get her ability to trigger. She's a really... Another one of these 6 drops. Not a big fan of these, as you already know. Whoa, lots of skulls. Still haven't beaten the little troll monster things. The little halflings. There's a halfling card that has all skulls right down to the bottom. Reduce the cost to play Hip Sing Tong by 2 for each story card in the opponent's 1 pile. That's what I say to that. After a character's skill has been reduced to 0, exhaust it. Awesome. That's freaking awesome. It's 6 costs, so it sucks. That freaking sucks. Okay, next. I hate those 6 cost cards. Go away. Okay, we're almost done. Last 2 cards. Booyah. Nephron Ka. Sorcerer. Beautiful. More sorcerers. Now, the Yogg box was such a disaster. You got to read the FAQ for the Yogg box. It's ridiculous. It's so huge. Basically, they forgot to print Sorcerer on tons of cards. So the Sorcerer deck that no one can make work is actually a lot easier to make work when you realize that half the cards in the Yogg box were supposed to be Sorcerers. Anyway, response. Oh, and they brought in Yithians. Oh, and that fucking mill deck. Oh, God, I hate that box. That almost made me quit. After a player draws 1 or more cards through a card effect, search your deck for a sorcerer character, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Beautiful. It's a 3 for 2. Terror, Arcane, and Skull. That's a very solid... Definitely have to be playing the Sorcerer tribe properly, though. But lots of really good sorcerers in Twilight as well. And now we have the final 6 one. 3 Arcane, 2 Terrors. Beautiful, great looking art. During each player's draw phase, instead of drawing 2 cards, that player draws 1 card and then discards 1 card from the top of his deck. Wow. But it happens to both of us. Yeah, I don't know. It's so easy to get cards in, to get your deck in this game just choked out. I don't know. That one doesn't really do much for me at all. In fact, I'd go as far as to say. Well, that's it. That is the whole of the set. Look at all those cards. Boom. Hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you guys next time. Oh, wait. Let me do my favorite art and card. Have a quick zip through. And we'll find which one we want to run with. I reckon this might be my favourite card. Ancestral Fear. And look at the art. It's like a cave paint. I think I'm going to go this. Oh, it's a real toss-up between that and this sucker over here. Yeah, right at the end. Right at the start. Gustav Johnson. The guy that draws cards when called. Wow, that is such a good card. But I think this is the card that I'm going to choose as my favorite card in the set, just because it's such an interesting card. What it does is so unique. It's basically, It's allowing you to build a deck that synergizes off story abilities, which is something that's never been done as far as I know. And I just think that's going to open up some interesting ideas. It might never be viable, but it's a really, really cool idea. Best art I'm going to give to this one, to the Aurora Borealis. Love that. It's basically just... it's not really Aurora Borealis as much as a big squidgy tentacle monster flying around in its iridescent suit. Love it. Okay, well, I'll see you guys next time.